Hey, Happy New Year. Welcome back to SunCast. If you're new here, welcome in, and thank you for giving us the only non-renewable resource you've got. That's your time. I promise to make good use of it. You are listening to SunCast. We are interviewing and demonstrating leadership on the front lines of the clean energy transition through the eyes of the folks building what I consider to be the most important companies of our time. This is a tactical Tuesday. These are practical episodes and insights from folks on the front lines to give you the tools and tips you need to build your career, your business, as we all address climate change together. My name is Nico. I'm the host. And if you have noticed in the title, there's not a guest today as we kick off 2024. I am your guest and your guest host, if you will, to discuss a little project that I'll be engaging in throughout the course of 2024. And since today is the second day of the year, it's the second day that I'm taking action on my personal project for the year. I wanted to disclose it with you, and I wanted to share a little bit about how you can follow along. Obviously, if you're here listening on the podcast, I'll be talking more about my personal project, but I don't intend to take up your time in the SunCast feed with my personal projects and goals. This is really about your personal projects and goals. But see, that is just exactly the point. All of our personal projects interact with, overlap with, and find synergy where those who operate inside of our orbit can connect with us and help amplify each other's goals, dreams, visions, businesses, network. You see, one of the things that I've noticed is perhaps a superpower. When folks ask me, what's your superpower? I say that I'm a connector. I think about it more than just about any other thing. In the middle of interviews, I'm literally writing emails and connecting folks with the guest that I'm interviewing. It's just something I've learned to do, second nature. And it's one of the ways that I've built my business. I've built my career. And I find that so many people shy away from networking. Well, I say that networking is connecting. It's connecting the dots. It's connecting people. It is connecting the ideas with a home where those ideas can grow roots and become real things. Real people engage in those real things. And as I discussed with my team, a deep desire that I had, which was an unmet need, we centered around this idea of connectedness and the human potential in our industry to change the world. And I thought, maybe there's a word that represents the potential, the human potential of connecting and combining ideas and resources. And there is. And if you're a real geek, you already know what that word is. That word is valence. When I discovered the word valence, in part by chance, but I don't believe in chance, by God leading me to that term, frankly, because I was looking at what does it look like when there are free electrons? And if you look up for very long at all, what does it look like around, like what are terms around free electrons? You'll find valence. So I'm going to read to you the Merriam-Webster dictionary term for valence, and then I'm going to tell you why it matters to you and how it is relevant for what I said is my 2024 project. Valence is the degree of combining power of an element. The definition goes much further, but I'm going to stop there for now. The degree of combining power of an element. It's how water as a molecule can come to be, because oxygen has a valence of 6 and it's looking for 2 more electrons. Where does it get those electrons? Hydrogen, of course, H2O. And that is one of the sustaining elements of our life, of our bodies, of the very earth that we inhabit. It's one of the things that we're trying to protect. And so therefore, I think valence is a fitting term for the relaunch of our weekly newsletter. I have let our newsletter become a little bastardized, if you will, because it essentially was just me under the umbrella of SunCast Media saying, join our newsletter and I'll let you know when another podcast is out. But that just doesn't it doesn't hold much water, so to speak. It's not super compelling unless you're just a super user and super listener of the show. So starting last week with our 12 days of Christmas influencer list, I've been secretly seeding the relaunch of our newsletter as a LinkedIn newsletter. Some of you have already subscribed, and I thank you. Some of you are just finding out about it today, and I invite you to go onto LinkedIn and subscribe to Valence. The easiest way is to look for any of the pinned posts on my LinkedIn profile, which is www.linkedin.com/in/NICKALUS, my first name, /Nicholas. You will see there that we've pinned a number of posts, PINNED, pinned a number of posts that I've written, i.e. pinned, that relate to our influencer list, my 12 days of Christmas gift to you, the folks that I think are rewriting the narrative around the energy and climate discussion in 2024. And it's my gift to you. It is the way that I am kicking off the year to show you folks that you should be connecting with, who I believe help connect the dots of the way the energy transition and climate action are taking root around the country and around the world through the human potential of each one of us telling a better story. And that is, for me, the completion of the molecule of what I've been working on. You see, I've spent 8 years building SunCast as a medium through which I get to tell the stories of some of my favorite people in the industry, some of the folks that I think are building truly transformative companies. People like Dan Shugar, influencer number 3 on our list. People like Sheldon Kimber, someone who would be on a much longer list. And folks like Mary Powell. We've captured the stories of some of these pioneers in our industry through SunCast. And over the last year, I've spent a lot of time with my private coaching clients, with our content marketing clients, helping them figure out how to tell their own story, how to capture some of the things that we're learning on SunCast and put them into their own storytelling narratives. Why am I launching on LinkedIn? Well, I heard smart marketers say, go where the people are. And most of you, our listeners, have either come from LinkedIn or are already on LinkedIn anyway. Yeah, we could easily do an email newsletter, and we probably will, but it's more important. It's easier. In fact, one of our latest live broadcasts, we had more subscribers or registrants through the LinkedIn Live event than through our direct landing page for the event. And that for me was telling. So I'm going to lean in. I'm usually a leader and a maven when it comes to product and technology adoption. I was offered as a LinkedIn creator to launch a newsletter back in 2020, and I didn't because I was afraid that people wouldn't sign up. I'll be honest. So I'm going to be a slow follower on this one, but I am going to launch Valence as a newsletter. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that resonate for me about this concept of valence and valency and why I think it's important for you. Now, I will link to, because I'm not nearly smart enough to explain, a Khan Academy video on valence electrons so that you can understand how valence electrons work. See, valence electrons are the electrons in the outermost shell or the energy level of an atom. If you look on the elemental chart, the farthest right side are the noble gases, right? They have a full outer shell. They have no valency, zero valence. I thought about actually naming the true story. I thought about naming the newsletter Helium because helium is the first noble gas. It is an incredibly important resource and one that is dwindling. And of course, it's named after Helios. So it is, for me, a very important core element. It's a noble gas. I like the idea. You see, it has no valency, which means it doesn't combine or need to combine with anything. And all of my work is about combining ideas and connecting the dots. And I believe that, to further the element, that my job is to connect the human potential. It's the human element of energy. And to help tell those stories and help you tell your stories better, I'm launching Valence in a way as a way to capture how, why, and with whom we connect the dots of the energy transition. one of those folks who I've tried to connect with others and who has connected me with a ton of ideas is a guy named Alessandro Blasi. Alessandro was the first one of our influencer list that we revealed back on December 26th for the 12 days of Christmas. And Alessandro is a must follow in the energy transition. Here's why. He provides valuable insight into the energy sector through his posts on LinkedIn, particularly his renewable energy posts. He works for the International Energy Agency over in Europe. And he has garnered nearly 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. He's a top voice on LinkedIn, as noted by the header you'll see on his LinkedIn page. And he regularly actually engages with his audience, sparking interesting discussions and debates and being present. He really believes in the power of LinkedIn to connect knowledge, ideas, and people. So my hat's off to you, Alessandro. Thanks for being such a giver. Alessandro is the first of our influencer list, number 2 on our influencer list, and someone who's personally on my bucket list for interviews here on SunCast. And so I'm putting that out into the world and into our community. If someone wants to help me, is Katharine Hayhoe. Katharine Hayhoe is someone who came to my attention back in the early 2020s, maybe 2019, when my friend James Elsmore interviewed her for his Forbes article series. And at the time, she was I'd say relatively little known climate scientist down in Texas who had this TED Talk that caught fire. It's now got more than 4 million views. Katharine, it truly is amazing to see how your climate science is making an impact in the world. She is a leading voice in the field and one that extends far beyond LinkedIn. She offers insights into the challenges that we face and the potential solutions for those challenges. Fun fact, one of her articles, which we'll also link to, was sort of the foundational knowledge for me of understanding this year's COP28. If you listened to our Industry Pulse COP28 takeaways episode, and she's got a fantastic book called Saving Us. It's all about her sort of reckoning as a climate scientist with how to tell the story of the need for climate action. She's got a really strong knack for making complex topics accessible and engaging. And I think that it's significant that her work at the Nature Conservancy as the chief climate scientist, is able to extend beyond her academia or her social media, but into the realm of policy and really connecting the dots for folks who need to better understand climate science, candidly, and to take action on it. The third influencer on our list that has already been revealed up through number 8, by the way, for those who've subscribed to Valence over on LinkedIn, is none other than Mr. Dan Shugar. For many of you, that name is going to be very familiar. And the number of dots that Dan Shugar has connected in this world is possibly incalculable. So I want to go back to the definition of valency. It's the number of atoms of a particular element that is combined with one atom of another element to form a molecule. It's what defines the molecular weight. It's the measure of the combining power of that atom. And I'll tell you, there are very few people in the solar industry and renewables at large who've had a greater combining power than Dan Shugar. He truly is a pioneer, an innovator, and a force of nature. He is one of the most savvy business leaders I've ever had the privilege of knowing. And he has taken an idea, that of the solar tracker, and turned it into an institution, Next Tracker, the largest it's sort of industry juggernaut of its kind as a manufacturer, to dominate a sector. And he really has been able to connect the power of specific technology to grow a market and to adopt new ideas to combine atoms, right? That whole idea of combining power really resonates. I want to also underscore, if I go back to Merriam-Webster, valence is the relative capacity to unite, react, or interact. And by relative, the way I interpret that is it's a capacity. It is relative to what? Relativity is always compared with. And I would say that that the power, the capacity for Daniel Shugar as an entity, sort of as a thought leader and an executive in our industry, is maybe not unmatched, but it is in a league of very few people. He was named S&P Global's Chief Trailblazer of the Year for 2023. So I guess you could say he's finally getting recognition for the hard work that he's done to incite a revolution with clean energy since 1995, 96, when he first started at PG&E. Perhaps it was a little earlier, but that's, I think, as I recall from my interview with him, when he began to really start leaning into renewables. And one thing I love about Dan is that he doesn't focus on how to sell Nextracker on LinkedIn or on social media. Instead, this Dinner with Dan series, if any of you have caught that, is one where he brings an idea that is a common misconception about our industry. And he clarifies it for this fictitious character now known as Uncle Bob. Now, we've all got an Uncle Bob, and I believe he, in fact, does have an Uncle Bob, which is fitting. And this, in Dinner with Dan, he suggests if you are going into these holiday meals confronting questions about why you're working on this thing called solar power, isn't it harmful to animals or taking up our farmland? There's a number of myths, and you should watch the whole Dinner with Dan series. What I believe is spectacular is that Dan could be educating about anything, but instead he says, you know what, let me take away these common misconceptions for the industry. Let me lean in with 40 years of experience and help those who are coming along behind me with less experience, less knowledge, to address these concerns, because that's what this industry really needs, is better storytelling. And I'm going to read part B of the second definition now under Merriam-Webster. It's in part from Valence in chemistry. It's borrowed from the Latin valentia, which is power capacity, and a noun derivative of the Latin valent, which is the present participle of valere, to have strength or be well. The degree of attractiveness of an individual, activity, or thing possesses as a behavioral goal. So to round out this idea, valence for me represents the strength and combining power of the various elements in our industry, how to connect those dots and how to share that story. I love that idea, the degree of attractiveness of an individual, activity, or thing that an activity, individual, or a thing possesses as a behavioral goal. It is setting a standard. What we've done with SunCast over the years is set this idea, this concept, this standard. Like Dan Shugar or Jigar Shah or Mary Powell or Abby Hopper, the standard of what it looks like to create something truly inspirational or great, and the thought process that goes into it. And that's what I'll be exploring every week through Valence as we unpack this project. I guess one thing I didn't share with you is that my commitment for the year, beyond launching Valence as a standalone project, is that the underlying principle is connecting to the dots. And therefore, I'm making myself a personal challenge that I will be connecting to people every day for 365 days. I'm going to try to find meaningful ways to connect those around me, but also to track the progress and the results. Because I do think that there's a combining power in combining people. And so through the podcast and the newsletter and just my daily living, my intent is to connect you all with ideas, with humans, and with the core elements of a great story. I hope that you'll follow along. I'm honored that you have hung out here for the last 20 minutes with us. Hope that you'll come back on Thursday, because I've got an absolutely amazing interview with my friend Stephen Zhu from Trina Solar. Stephen is one of the catalytic forces behind Trina becoming a global brand, and you will not want to miss that conversation. In the meantime, in the description of whatever podcast player you're on, or on our website, or right here on YouTube, if you're watching, you'll see a link to some of the posts that we've made with regards to our 12 Days of Christmas influencer list. Of course, that is the way that you can find Valence on LinkedIn. I hope that you'll follow the breadcrumbs that we've left, and I hope that you will share that with others. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us. Remember, you are what you listen to. Thanks again for showing up this and every time. Solar Warrior, showing up is half the battle.